Many cavers can testify that deep beneath the Earth's surface, where sunlight dares not reach, lies a world of breathtaking beauty and unfathomable danger. Now imagine you and your friend are descending into the depths, navigating through labyrinthine tunnels that twist and turn as if carved by ancient hands. But in this realm of silent beauty, and just when you're about to discover the discovery of a lifetime, tragedy strikes. There and then, you lose your friend forever, only for you to return from the cave alone. How would that feel? This is Fatal Tragedies, with the world's most tragic story of cave diving gone wrong. We start with the story of Roger Solari and his friend, Martin Farr.
The cave system, Ogof Agan Ashweth, stands as the longest cave system on the Langatok Escarpment, boasting an extensive network of passages stretching over 20.2 miles. Notable for its vast expanse, Agan Ashweth unfortunately contains few formations. However, its significance extends beyond its geological features. The cave serves as a crucial habitat for a considerable population of bats. Recognizing the ecological importance of these creatures, they are strictly protected from disturbance under various legislations, including the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981, the Habitat Regulations Act of 1994, and the EC Habitats Directive. Deliberately or recklessly disturbing bats is a criminal offense. Cavers are urged to exercise caution and take measures to avoid causing any disturbance to this vital bat habitat. Initially, this cave was accessed through the Agan Ashweth entrance. However, access has since been gated through the Ogof Gam entrance, offering an alternative route that bypasses an awkward rift section. The original path through this section is now obstructed by a pillar. To enter the cave, individuals with valid permits can obtain keys, and they're required to sign a book indicating the chosen route. Certain regulations govern activities within the cave. Notably, the use of carbide is prohibited. Additionally, specific permits are necessary for camping inside the cave, engaging in blasting activities, or conducting research. These measures are in place to ensure responsible exploration and conservation of the cave system. In 2005, some divers decided to explore Agan Ashweth in order to figure out the tricky connection leading to Darren Sea. They began digging into the inlet and uncovered a beautiful 984-foot passageway in the cave system. This passage eventually leads to the stunning corkscrew chamber. The cave's pathways extend for more than 20.2 miles. As you enter, you'll go through a short series at the entrance, then encounter the first boulder choke. There are also other round passages to check out inside the cave. Initially, you'll need to crawl through the long entrance passageways, but eventually, you'll reach larger ones that you can explore without any special diving equipment. One interesting journey within Agan Ashweth is the Grand Circle, located in the mainstream passageway. This route boasts 4 boulder chokes, passages blocked by rocks. Another round passage, the Southern Stream Passage, is long, damp, and quite tiring. Delve into the cave's outer and inner circle, including the fascinating Turkey Stream Way, featuring an amazing stream with pools. However, be prepared to spend about 6 hours on each round passage, and caution is essential, especially during the rainy season. Why, you ask? Well, that's obvious. These areas are prone to flooding. The waterway at the third boulder choke is often filled, and during extreme floods, passage to the second boulder choke becomes impossible. The confined section of Turkey Stream, way beyond Northwest Junction, is also off limits during heavy floods. It's also worth mentioning that Brian Price and his partners were the first to investigate the cave in 1949. The following year, David Seagrove and Harold Hicken explored the passageways, advancing until they reached the first boulder choke. In 1957, the Hereford Caving Club pushed the exploration boundaries by breaking through the first boulder choke, which had previously hindered access to the main part of the cave. Then, in 1971 and 1972, John Parker, Jeff Phillips, and a few others took on the adventure of exploring the Agan Ashweth cave system. The duo, John and Jeff, made a significant discovery in 1972, uncovering a new passageway that extended for an impressive 1,969 feet. Roger Solari takes over. In the saga of Aegon Ashweth's exploration, after adding an impressive 1,476 feet downstream to the known passageways, Jon's enthusiasm waned. Enter Martin Farr, inspired by the legacy of diving adventures left by Parker. Taking up the torch, Martin commenced his exploration in 1973. The following year, in 1974, he teamed up with Roger Solari for what would become the longest cave exploration at that time. However, this ambitious journey took a tragic turn when Roger faced an unfortunate incident. So, what exactly happened? Roger Solari, a true maestro of cave exploration in Great Britain, had an impressive resume of dives across Yorkshire, South Wales, and Ireland. A dedicated and resilient man in the realm of cave diving, Roger, despite his introverted nature, earned popularity and respect wherever he ventured. Nothing seemed insurmountable to him. He was a relentless pursuer of success. His journey into the underwater world began at the tender age of 12 in his homeland, the Forest of Dean. Through continuous exploration, he became intimately acquainted with the forest secrets and geology. Roger's academic pursuits focused on the Forest Master's system, aiming to document various caves and mines within the forest realm. The prevailing notion was that these caves were linked underground, and the goal was to navigate through passages to discover the elusive connection to caves on the other side of the country or even the world. His life was a tale of pushing through challenges, transforming a forest into his canvas of exploration and discovery. Roger Solari's journey continued beyond his cave explorations. Graduating with honors in physics from Birmingham University, he not only excelled academically, but also assumed leadership roles. At his school, he held the prestigious position of president of the Speleological Society, showcasing his passion for exploration. The initial meeting between Martin Farr and Roger occurred during Roger's freshman year at university. Their friendship was built on mutual trust and reliability. Roger, recognized for his unwavering commitment, often waited patiently for hours as fellow adventurers gathered caving equipment. He was typically the first to venture into the cave. Roger went on to establish the Cave Project Group and joined the Forest Rescue Association, further cementing his commitment to spelunking and safety. In contrast, Martin, known for his smaller stature, speed, and strength, had a penchant for exploring various sections of the cave, willingly embracing more risks. Despite their differences in approach, their friendship thrived on a shared passion for exploration. While Roger excelled in steadfastness in being the first to enter the cave, Martin's curiosity led him to focus on exploring the Atlantic area, where Agena Cave was located. Despite the potential for significant discoveries, access to the submerged passageways in this region was frequently restricted due to the inherent dangers associated with exploration during the specific period. On Saturday, June 15, 1974, a pivotal moment in the Aegon Ashweth Cave's history unfolded as Roger Solari, accompanied by the renowned Martin Farr, embarked on a daring mission. Martin, a stalwart figure in cave diving, had earned global acclaim for his remarkable discoveries in the cave diving community. His journey into caving began at the tender age of 10, showcasing a remarkable passion for the discipline. As a testament to his dedication, Martin achieved his first discovery of new caves by the age of 16. His adventurous spirit and early accomplishments mark him as a true pioneer in the world of cave exploration. Together, Roger and Martin aimed to push the boundaries of exploration, extending the passages of Aegon Ashweth Cave from where John Parker had left off. In 1971 and 1972, significant diving explorations unfolded in the Agona Wythith Cave, led notably by John Parker. However, the demanding nature of solo diving took a toll on Parker, leading to burnout. He realized that he was committing errors, potentially life-threatening, which were unusual for him in cave exploration. Recognizing the need for a break from navigating perilous water-filled caves, Parker decided to step back and hand the reins to someone else eager to make a mark. Someone like Martin Farr. They recalled the achievements of John Parker, who had uncovered an additional 1,476 feet of passageway. So, Roger and Martin were poised with only one objective in mind: to surpass the point where John Parker had halted, delving into the uncharted sections of this mysterious underground realm. This initiative marked a new chapter in the ongoing saga of cave exploration, with Martin Farr ready to take up the challenge and push the boundaries of discovery. However, a month before their planned dive, Martin had already ventured into the cave system, although without Roger, who unfortunately had to bow out due to a knee injury. This unforeseen obstacle marked a poignant moment in the lead-up to their joint exploration: the discovery of a dream passage. In the course of their exploration, Martin Farr reached the point where John Parker had halted, discovering a vast passage that beckoned into the darkness. A passage that all cave divers dream of finding. Filled with excitement, Martin hurried down the passage, eager to unravel its mysteries. However, his exploration on this day came to an abrupt halt due to insufficient air in his tanks. But still, Martin was not satisfied, and he was ready for another exploration, this time around being well prepared. So, a month later in June 1974, Roger and Martin geared up for an extensive exploration. Their destination? The downward stream Sump 4 in the mainstream. Armed with 3 air cylinders, a pair of boots, and a line reel each, they encountered smooth progress until reaching Sump 4. Roger led the dive, laying line with his 400-foot reel, while Martin followed closely with the 1,000-foot reel. During the dive, Roger signaled difficulties with the sinuses, a challenge he had faced before. Despite Martin suggesting a return when the issue persisted, Roger, determined to continue the exploration, pressed on. They operated independently during the dive, allowing either of them to decide when to surface, an integral part of their plan. As Roger's line reached its end about 400 feet into the sump, it became evident that they were at a depth of 50 to 60 feet, and the passage continued to descend. Martin, nearing his first third limit of air, chose to continue, while Roger, with slightly less air, was urged to head back. Martin progressed into the deeper passage, around 150 feet later, where he should have turned back, but he noticed a gravel bank with a steep upward slope. Checking his pressure gauge, he realized he was well into his second third of air. In a desperate attempt for air, Martin ascended the slope, hoping for an air pocket. Raising higher and higher, just about 3 feet below the water's surface, he realized there was no breathing space. With only half a bottle of air remaining, Martin had to use it wisely to escape the cave. Pushing his limits to the extreme, Martin swiftly made his way out, spotting Roger near the passage roof at the shallow depth of 3 feet. Signaling to Roger that it was time to surface, Martin dropped his reel and Roger clung to his line. Both perilously low on air, the urgency to exit was paramount. Martin reached the deepest point and began the return journey along the tunnel. However, due to his rapid ascent, he experienced acute ear pain. Pausing on the line to clear his ears, Martin waited, but Roger failed to emerge. The situation grew tense as minutes passed without Roger's appearance. Martin's desperate escape. Realizing he lacked sufficient air to search for Roger in the tunnel, Martin made the tough decision to ascend and reach the surface. Relief washed over him as he emerged, but Roger's absence left him uneasy. Waiting for Roger, Martin grew increasingly concerned, pondering the possibilities of what might have transpired. As time passed, Martin, running out of air, faced a difficult choice. He couldn't wait any longer for Roger inside the cave, a decision aligned with professional diving practices. However, with Roger still absent upon Martin's return to the surface, he faced the dilemma of whether to risk re-entering the cave with his air reserve. Taking the risk, Martin re-entered the cave, pulling the line. However, it was slack. Proceeding about 430 feet or 131 meters further, he encountered the same issue. The line had been cut approximately 30 feet or 9 meters after the point where it was joined. With insufficient air to continue safely, Martin returned to the surface. He waited anxiously, faced with the grim reality of Roger's prolonged absence. Upon the return of John Elliott and his friends from their 9-hour dive, Martin shared the disconcerting news, that Roger had not returned from the fourth sump. Swiftly, they reported the situation to the police, and the cave rescue team, initiating a response to the unfolding crisis, arrived on scene. And now it was time for search and rescue efforts. In response to the tragic incident, John Parker, renowned for his expertise, was called upon. On Sunday evening, the recovery team attempted to dive and retrieve Roger's body. Unfortunately, heavy rainfall in South Wales resulted in poor visibility, complicating their efforts. Despite spending the night at the site, the search was suspended due to the challenging conditions. After a few days, on the following Thursday, the search resumed with a team of 10 divers, including John Elliott, John Parker, and Colin Edmund, a local diver. Their focus shifted to the terminal sump where Roger was last seen. John Parker and Colin Edmund entered the cave, while the others waited at the surface. However, poor visibility persisted, and when Colin surfaced after reaching the third sump, he reported the challenging conditions. Undeterred, John Parker, armed with 4 air cylinders, continued the search alone. Despite laying over 500 feet of line and poor visibility, Roger's body remained elusive. After 3.5 hours, Parker returned to the surface. The collective decision of the 10 divers, after a brief meeting, was to call off the search to avoid further risks. The fruitless 10.5-hour effort marked a somber end to their quest to find Roger Solari. Regrettably, Roger's body could not be retrieved from Aiken Ashweth, leaving the circumstances of his fate shrouded in mystery within the cave. The cave diving community was left to grapple with the unknown, speculating on the possibility that he may have become entangled, leading to his decision to cut the line from the reel. Roger Solari's cheerful spirit would be sorely missed by his diving buddies and the members of his cave community in South Wales, Yorkshire, and Ireland, where he had left an indelible mark.
Moving on, here's a story of a spot in Texas that isn't just risky, it's actually considered one of the most dangerous places on the entire planet.
The enigmatic Jacob's Well. Now, the story goes that in the mid-1850s, a settler arrived in Texas seeking a spot for a water-powered mill between San Antonio and Austin. While exploring along a creek, he noticed a rough area in the water resembling a bubbling cauldron. This turned out to be Jacob's Well, an outflow from a karst spring connected to the Trinity Aquifer. Jacob's Well initially had a powerful flow, creating an upside-down waterfall on the surface. A mill was built to harness this natural force, operating for decades until mid-20th century construction damaged the aquifer. The reduced outflow revealed a cavern beneath, turning Jacob's Well into a 12-foot diameter blue hole in the riverbed. The limestone rock, eroded with water, formed a large underground cave beyond what's visible in the river. Despite initial difficulty exploring due to strong currents, divers eventually delved into Jacob's Well, discovering its true size. While many enjoy swimming and cliff jumping into the river, Jacob's Well has gained notoriety as one of the deadliest diving sites globally, with tragic incidents marking its reputation over the years. The spring opening in the creek bed leads to Jacob's Well Cave, descending vertically about 30 feet before continuing at an angle. This cave system comprises silted chambers separated by narrow passages, reaching an average depth of 120 feet. Cave diving risks. Divers from the Jacob's Well Exploration Project have explored and mapped the cave, revealing 2 main conduits. The first passage extends approximately 4,500 feet from the surface, reaching a maximum depth of 137 feet. The second passage branches off from the primary conduit, spanning around 1,000 feet. While the cave attracts open-water divers, not all possess the necessary training and equipment required for cave diving. Tragically, between 1964 and 1984, 9 deaths occurred at Jacob's Well due to inexperienced divers attempting to explore its depths without the required cave diving skills. This underscores the importance of proper training and equipment for those venturing into this captivating but perilous underwater cave system. Now, on the night of September 9, 1979, 2 adventurous divers, Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear, along with a group of divers from Pasadena, set up camp at Jacob's Well in Wimberley. The mission? To explore the mysterious cave system. Eager to dive ahead of the large group and avoid disturbing the sediment, Kent and Mark entered the water at 23:30 while others set up camp. A dangerous descent and tragic consequences. Kent and Mark, both experienced divers in their early 20s, aimed not just to dive into the cave, but to reach the last recorded chamber, known for its deadly history. As they descended through the first chamber, they navigated a 30-foot drop to a bare rock platform. Moving sideways into the second chamber, they encountered a long, sloping environment. Chamber 2 led to the birth canal at around 75 feet, a narrowing passage into Chamber 3. Here, they found other divers exploring what was considered the last safe chamber. Undeterred, Mark and Kent had their eyes set on a more challenging prize. Chamber 4, a location with a tragic history that had claimed the lives of 4 other divers. Descending the sloping gravel floor to the entrance of Chamber 4 at around 90 feet deep, they reach depths where divers can experience nitrogen narcosis. This neurological effect, akin to the impact of drinking martinis, becomes more pronounced with depth. Kent, affected by nitrogen narcosis, took over the scuba gear, turned around, and backed into the tunnel leading to Chamber 4. Mark followed suit. Jay Moy, another diver in Chamber 3, observed Mark's questionable move without cave gear or a proper light. Joe, aware that Kent and Mark's steel tanks held less air than his aluminum ones and being deeper, understood the increased air consumption. So he attempted to catch Mark's attention, flashing his light in concern and banging on his tank with a knife to grab their attention. But there was no response. Mark and Kent, seemingly with tunnel vision, continued into the tunnel. For Joe, he knew that this would well mean the end for them. In an attempt to guide them back, he left one of his torches at the entrance to Chamber 4, hoping the 2 divers would follow it to find their way out. Upon reaching the surface, the once clear water of the well turned murky, possibly due to a gravel slide or the frantic movements of 2 divers in panic. Joe couldn't shake the grim realization that it was highly likely that Kent and Mark had met a tragic end in the unforgiving depths of Jacob's Well. He informed other divers of the unsettling events, setting the stage for a search and recovery mission. The hope for a rescue lingered in Joe's heart, but the harsh reality suggested otherwise. A call echoed through the local law enforcement channels, reaching Paul Batiglia, a police officer and seasoned cave diver. At the police station, he swiftly organized the rescue mission upon receiving the call. An hour later, he arrived at the home of Don Dibble, a former Navy diver, cave diving expert, and owner of the local dive shop. Both Batiglia and Dibble are members of the Hays County Volunteer Body Recovery Unit, and they understood the grim reality. This is not just a rescue, it's a body recovery. In a somber discussion, Dibble and Batiglia planned the operation, knowing the challenges they will face. Despite the distinction between rescue and recovery, their course of action remained similar. They called upon other members of the recovery unit, headed to Dibble's dive shop for necessary equipment, and made their way to Jacob's Well, just 15 minutes away. As they arrived at the site, darkness still blankets the surroundings. The group from Pasadena, already in the water, reported to Dibble that they haven't been able to recover either Mark or Kent. They started their brief that the 2 divers might be inside Chamber 4. Their certainty seemed from one diver's claim of witnessing equipment buried under a gravel slide in the passage leading down into Chamber 4. But what had happened? Kent and Mark had excavated the tunnel by shoveling loose gravel, risking their lives for the sake of exploring a few more square feet of submerged limestone. And so they were buried deep beneath Chamber 4 now. The stage was set for a challenging and crucial operation in the depths of Jacob's Well. How, you ask? The only safe retrieval method involved airlifting all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working down. Talk about a heck of a lot of work, right? In an attempt to improve the challenging conditions, the recovery process took an unfortunate turn for the worse. Don Dibble, receiving conflicting reports about the feasibility of the mission, decided to descend into the well himself. Accompanied by Game Warden Calvin Turner, they left spare tanks at depths of 25 and 75 feet, while unreeling safety lines to guide them further into the well. To ensure the bodies were not floating above them, they directed their lights upward into the ceiling crevice of the third room. The entrance where the two divers had last been seen remained blocked. Don, aware of his remaining air supply, checked his submersible pressure gauge, showing 1,100 pounds per square inch, enough for approximately 10 minutes at that depth. With caution, he placed his head and shoulders into the entrance, gripping the safety line with one hand and illuminating the passage with the other. To his dismay, all he could see were small pieces of gravel striking his mask lens due to the water's flow through the constriction. The elusive sight of the missing divers remained hidden in the depths of Jacob's well. Gravel bed. In the realization that removing the bodies hinged on clearing the unstable gravel bed, Don Dibble understood the perilous situation. However, it was too late. He became ensnared in the passage entrance due to a gravel slide. The water turned murky, obscuring visibility, and Don found himself trapped with his arms immobilized, unable to signal or bang on his tank. As he struggled, his breathing quickened and he rapidly ran out of air. Confronting the inevitability of his impending demise, Don remained remarkably composed, attempting to meet his fate quietly. Uncertain about the drowning process and its implications, he considered hastening it by either inhaling or drinking water. Fearing panic and thrashing if he inhaled water, which would cause embarrassment for his wife, he chose to drink the suffocating water. As he took a few gulps, dizziness set in and he resigned himself to his fate. In a sudden turn of events, an involuntary reflex prompted him to thrash around, freeing himself through his flooded mask. Calvin Turner, recognizing the dire situation, offered Don the regulator from the spare tank. Breathing in the welcomed air, Don found relief. However, as he ascended to the surface, a new set of problems emerged. The excessive air intake while diving caused some of it to enter his stomach rather than his lungs. The decreasing water pressure as he rose made the trapped air expand, adding a new layer of complexity to the already harrowing experience. Attempting to release the trapped air by burping proved unsuccessful for Don. Realizing the risk of decompression sickness and the urgency to ascend, he endured unbearable pain caused by the expanding gas. Upon surfacing, he displayed a physically distended abdomen resembling a woman 9 months pregnant. Removing his breathing regulator, Don let out a scream, but relief did not come until 12 hours later. Don's rare diving injury puzzled those around him, resembling some form of embolism where expanding air gets trapped in the lungs. The recommended treatment, a simulated dive in a recompression chamber, took place at Brooke Army Medical Center. Unfortunately, the severe pain persisted, prompting a transfer to another hospital. Here, X-rays revealed a startling diagnosis. His stomach wall had ruptured, leading to peritonitis. Astonishingly, Don should have already succumbed to a condition equivalent to having 5 ruptured appendixes. When the surgeon opened his swollen abdomen, it was akin to cutting into a basketball, highlighting the severity of his internal injuries. During Don's recovery from surgery, the search for the missing bodies persisted. Don Broad, a seasoned diver from Austin, known for his gruff and opinionated nature, took on the task. Despite his tough exterior, he had harbored a deep fascination with Jacob's Well since his childhood in El Campo. At 46 years old, he dove down deep to the opening of the last passage and peered inside. Spotting Dibble's dropped light, he observed a corridor filled with gravel, speculating that it contained the bodies. Realizing that Kent and Mark probably worked really hard to dig the tunnel by shoveling loose rocks that later had them perished, Broad decided the safest way to get the rocks out of the cave was to use the helicopter. They would airlift all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working their way down. 2 days later, a flatbed truck arrived at Jacob's Well, carrying a white recompression chamber resembling a space capsule. This chamber, owned by Schaefer Diving Company, was brought in by the victims' families to retrieve the bodies. Louis Schaefer, the company owner, expressed optimism about the operation's success and became the first diver to descend. Visible from the surface until he reached the juncture at 25 feet, he exclaimed, "God Almighty," upon seeing the entrance to the final passage, signaling the challenges that lay ahead. Later that afternoon, Lewis's divers used a large hose to suction gravel from the 60-foot level, spewing it into Cypress Creek downstream from the well. Larger rocks were placed into burlap bags, tied to ropes by volunteer scuba divers, and hauled to the surface. Despite their persistent efforts, the challenging task proved arduous, as every foot of gravel removed seemed to be replaced by another. Despite difficulties, they continued their work diligently. Financial constraints led to a temporary halt in the search operation. When divers resumed after 2 days, they discovered that the opening they had diligently cleared for a week had nearly closed up again in their absence. Faced with the daunting realization that their efforts could last for weeks or months and with no compensation for their work, the situation seemed increasingly futile. A second opinion from a group of divers sent by Chet Brooks from Brown and Root affirmed what Lewis's team had reluctantly admitted to themselves. The most prudent course of action was to leave the bodies undisturbed and seal off Jacob's Well. 12 days after Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear tragically perished, the search for their bodies was officially terminated. Several months later, after his recovery, in January of 1980, Don, eager to prevent others from facing the same fate as Kent and Mark, took action at Jacob's Well. Bags of concrete were lowered into the cave, and over several hours, he built a wall over the entrance of the fourth chamber. The wall incorporated a metal grate, allowing water to flow while sealing the bodies inside. Surprisingly, this deterrent proved ineffective. Some divers equipped with the necessary tools removed the grate, leaving a message for Don on a plastic slate that read, "You can't keep us out." With the grate removed, divers continued to explore Jacob's Well, pushing the limits of its deeper section. 4 years after Kent and Mark's deaths, and 3 years after the gate installation, 2 members of an advanced diving class at Texas State University, Richard and Clark, aimed to complete a challenging dive. They navigated through the first 2 chambers and the third, reaching the squeeze where the gate had been installed. It's unclear whether divers had removed the gravel or if water flow had widened the crevice, but by the time Richard and Clark dived, it was accessible. Removing their air tanks, they shimmied backward through the narrow crevice. Clark's tanks got snagged on rocks, and despite efforts, he had to let them go to join Richard on the other side. Richard handed Clark his regulator, and they began buddy breathing, marking the end of their exploration for that day. What happened next is a story for another day. A decade after Mark and Kent's incident, most of Mark's remains were found, bringing some closure. Unfortunately, Kent's body was never recovered. Exactly 21 years later, Kent's remains were finally discovered, providing his family the closure that they had sought for so long, and he could be laid to rest.
These stories remind us of humanity's urge to explore, set against nature's harsh realities. And I know what you're asking yourself now. What pulls us into these hidden worlds where danger waits just beyond the light? Why do we dive deep despite the looming risks? What would you dare to discover in the depths? Let me know in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.